Hey guys, tonight we're heading into a place where steam fogs the walls, sandals squeak on wet marble, and every whisper seems to echo louder than it should. Yes, you're stepping into a Roman bathhouse. And no, you might not survive the social politics on your first visit, not because anyone's actually dangerous, but because you might drown in a tidal wave of gossip before you even get your feet wet. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, tell me in the comments what city you're in and what time it is right now. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You push open the door, and the first thing that hits you isn't the sight of the poolside, it's the wall of warm, damp air mixed with a faint tang of olive oil and human curiosity. The attendants barely glance at you as you hand over your sandals and tunic, but you feel the stares of others lingering a moment longer than they need to. New faces in the bathhouse are like new scrolls at the library. Everyone wants to skim the surface before deciding if it's worth reading in full. The calderoned hot room breathes out waves of heat from its hypocaust floor. You can already feel the steam softening your skin, but before you can step in, your ears catch a snippet of conversation between two older men in the corner. It's about someone's son, a promising lawyer who apparently argued a case so poorly that the magistrate fell asleep before the verdict. The men chuckle, but lower their voices when you pass, as if this was just the preview of a much Jewisher tale, reserved for those in the inner circle. The thing about Roman bathhouses is that they're not just for bathing. They're an open-air senate of the people, a mix of business meeting, sports bar, and neighborhood rumor mill. You'll see senators with their hair tied back in sweat, soldiers letting their armored timelines show, and freedmen who know every detail about who owes whom money. And it's all happening while they drip water onto the stone floor. There's also a kind of social choreography here. No one barges into a conversation to quickly ease in, maybe with a compliment about the oil someone's using myrrh and cinnamon, very fine, or a casual remark about the weather, which is just code for I want to know whatever you're talking about. Once you've been accepted, the whispers come easier. Of course, historians still debate whether bathhouse gossip was more about personal drama or political scheming. Some say these steamy rooms were where revolts began. Others think it was mostly "did you hear what she wore to the festival?" The kind of harmless talk that evaporates as quickly as the steam itself. Personally, standing here, hearing snippets float in and out of the mist, you're convinced it's both. You're not just washing away dirt here, you're soaking in a cultural broth of news, half-truths, and sly smirks. And that's before you've even touched the water. You ease into the tepid warm room where the heat feels like a soft cloak instead of an assault. The steam here hands lower, and the voices grow clearer. You slide onto a marble bench still damp from the last visitor, and instantly you're part of the soundscape. The quiet slosh of water, the rhythmic slap of a strigil scraping oil and sweat, the hushed cadence of two women trading secrets across the aisle. One of them leans closer to the other, eyes darting around before she whispers something about a certain baker's wife. You don't catch every word, but the phrase "seen with" is always promising. The other woman gasps aloud for this close space and covers it with a polite cough. The corners of their mouths twitch as they resume scraping oil, as if nothing scandalous just passed between them. This is the real function of the tepidarium. It's the conversational bridge. The caldarium's heat can be overwhelming for long chats, and the frigidarium's cold is for bracing silence. But here, Here's where the threads of gossip are woven together. Business deals are hinted at in half sentences. Marriages are speculated upon, and reputations, they rise and fall faster than the steam swirling above the floor. You notice a pair of men in the opposite corner, their tone low and serious. One gestures subtly toward the doorway, and you catch a glimpse of a senator you've seen in the forum. He doesn't linger just enough time to exchange a few quick words before moving on. Was it a political arrangement? A discreet warning? Historians are still debating how much politics truly unfolded here. Some argue the bathhouses were to public for real intrigue. Others insist that the constant flow of people made them the perfect place to hide in plain sight. You lean back, letting the warmth seep into your bones. The oil on your skin catches the faint light from the open doorway, and for a moment you can almost believe this is just a spot day in the ancient world. But then a younger man bursts in, still flushed from exercise, and calls across the room to a friend. Within seconds, the two are laughing about a mutual acquaintance who slipped on the bathhouse steps last week. No detail is too small here, whether it's the price of fish in the market, the quality of last night's play, or the accidental meeting between two rivals at the palestra. Everything becomes part of the bathhouse archive, and unlike the scrolls in the great libraries, this archive is rewritten every day, by every voice. The attendant shuffles past with a bucket, the iron handle clinking against the rim. It's a subtle reminder that the bathhouse isn't just about leisure, it's a machine that runs on the unspoken cooperation of its patrons. You respect the rhythm, you respect the space, and you never, ever interrupt a whisper unless you're invited in. As you rise to move toward the hotter room, you realize that you've just spent the better part of an hour marinating in other people's stories, and the night's only getting started. The caldarium greets you like a wall of heat, thick, almost solid, with a humidity that instantly beats your skin in moisture. The air is rich with the tang of mineral water, and the faint herbal scent from a jar of crushed bay leaves someone has brought in. Here, the chatter drops to a murmur. The heat demands respect, and conversation is slower, punctuated by pauses for deep breaths. You take a seat on the smooth stone bench, its surface hot enough to make you shift until you find the least toasty spot. Across from you, two men lean close, speaking in fragments. You catch a word here and 3 names. A date, something about a shipment from Alexandria. In the caldarium, this is how secrets work, half spoken, half steamed away, leaving only enough for the listener to piece together. The steam curls upward, blurring faces and gestures. You remember reading somewhere that Roman architects designed these rooms to keep heat in but also to limit visibility, creating natural cover for private exchanges. Historians still argue whether this was intentional or just a happy accident of brick, mortar, and water vapor. Either way, it's effective. Your own vision narrows to the hazy outlines of bodies and the glint of sweat under the oil lamps. To your right, a woman reclines with her eyes half closed as an attendant ladles hot water over her shoulders. She looks utterly relaxed until her friend leans in and mutters something that makes her eyebrows shoot up. You can't hear the words, but her lips form the unmistakable Roman equivalent of "no way." The two dissolve into quiet laughter that blends with a gentle splash of water against style. A slave carrying a bronze bucket squeezes past, careful not to spill. Even here, in the heat, the silent etiquette of space is maintained. You don't block the path, you don't linger too long in prime seating spots. And if someone's mid-story, You wait before stepping through the steam cloud that envelopes them. The conversations here have a different flavor from the tepidarium. They're shorter, more urgent, like the heat is pushing them out before the speaker changes their mind. You hear mention of a dispute over an inheritance, a brief complaint about grain prices, and, most tantalizingly, a whispered remark about last night in the Subura that ends in a conspiratorial chuckle. As you soak in the heat, you notice how the sound of the water echoes in the dome above, carrying voices just far enough that you can't quite tell who said what. It's the perfect acoustic trick. Everyone hears something, but no one hears everything. When you finally stand to leave, your skin is flushed, your hair damp, and your mind humming with half stories you'll never get the full ending to. You step toward the cooler air outside the door, and the contrast is like stepping from a dream back into reality. Though in the Roman bathhouse, reality is often stranger than dreams. The frigidarium is a shock to the system. One step in and the heat of the caldarium evaporates from your skin, replaced by an icy bite that makes every hair stand on end. The pool's surface ripples under the flicker of oil lamps, and the cold marble beneath your feet seems to hum with its own quiet authority. This is where conversations either die instantly or sharpen into something bracing, like the water itself. You wade in up to your knees, and the chill is almost unbearable. A man beside you gasps out a laugh, muttering something about waking the dead, and you realize that humor here is part survival strategy. No one can stand in the frigidarium for long without talking about something, anything to distract from the cold creeping up their spine. A group of younger men cluster near the steps, shivering but grinning as they exchange news about the latest chariot races. The names of the teams flew, green, red, white, fleet through the air like banners in an invisible stadium. Someone makes a joke about a driver's scandalous dinner companion last week, and the whole group erupts into laughter. It's the kind of story that will grow legs and sprint through the streets by morning. On the far side of the pool, two older women sit on the edge, feet dangling in the water, speaking in low tones. You only catch fragments. Her brother, the magistrate, a gift of wine, but the way they lean in, heads almost touching, makes you certain this is more than idle chatter. In the cold, the body language tells the story. The quick glance over a shoulder, the brief pause when someone else passes too close. The sound here is sharper than in the steam rooms. The cold marble walls bounce every word, every laugh, every splash straight back at you. Historians still debate whether the frigidarium was meant purely for health, or if its acoustics played an accidental role in spreading gossip. After all, a careless word here could carry farther than intended. You notice, too, the way people use movement as an excuse to end or avoid a conversation. A dip into the deeper part of the pool becomes the perfect exit from a sensitive topic. A sudden plunge under the water provides just enough interruption for someone to change the subject entirely. When they resurface, as your own toes go numb, you realize you've stopped feeling cold in the ordinary sense. Now it's just a tingle, half pain, half exhilaration that makes the whole road seem sharper. You climb out, dripping, and wrap yourself in a wool cloak. The laughter and murmurs of the frigidarium following you like a trail of icy air. From here, the path curves back toward the warmer rooms, and you can already hear the murmur of voices blending into the rhythmic splash of water. The bathhouse draws you onward, one temperature, one conversation, one fragment of gossip at a time. You drift toward the tepidarium, the in-between space that feels like a warm embrace after the frigidarium's icy bite. The marble floor radiates a gentle heat, and the air smells faintly of lavender oil. Someone splurged for a scented infusion tonight. The light is soft here, filtered through thin linen drapes that sway slightly as people move past. This is the lounging room, the conversational sweet spot. You sink onto a white stone bench. Its surface warm enough to make you sigh, and immediately notice how people's voices take on a different tone here. Gone is the high-pitched chatter of the cold room, or the muffled whispers of the caldarium. This is the realm of drawn-out storytelling. Across from you, two older men recline like they've been here since the Republic. One gestures lazily with his hand, describing at great length how a senator's speech was so dull last week that even the pigeons roosting in the forum looked bored. His companion chuckles, adding a detail about how the same senator's wife was seen slipping out of a dinner early with a family friend. They both nod as if to say, "Of course. This is exactly what happens when you marry for alliances." Near the doorway, a group of women share a low couch, passing a bowl of figs between them. Their talk drifts from recipes to fashion. Apparently there's a scandal over a new style of tunic that's too Greek for some taste. One woman leans in to murmur that she's already ordered one in deep purple, a shade only allowed for certain ranks. Her companions gasp just loud enough for half the room to hear, because a little theater never hurts when stirring the pot. The tepidarium is also where travelers shine. A young man with sunburned cheeks and a provincial accent holds court near the fountain, recounting tales from the northern frontier. His stories mix weather complaints with rumors of a new military campaign, and whether they're entirely true is anyone's guess. Still, the crowd laps it up. Foreign gossip tastes different, like imported wine. Here, pauses matter as much as words. People lean back, sip warm water or wine, and let silences stretch just long enough to signal that they know more than they're saying. Historians still argue whether this deliberate pacing was an art form, or simply the byproduct of people soaking to longing county heat. Either way, it makes every conversation feel like the prelude to a revelation. You watch as a servant glides in with a fresh jug of water, her eyes darting to a pair of men who suddenly break off their conversation. Something about her arrival shifted the current. Was she just doing her job, or did she overhear something she shouldn't? Moments like this are the undercurrent of the bathhouse, tiny, unspoken ripples that can turn into waves later in the taverns and marketplaces. You realize that tepidarium isn't just a room between hot and cold. It's the bathhouse social hinge. People pass through, linger, and sometimes never leave until their skin is wrinkled and their minds pleasantly buzzing with other people's business. And as you rise to move on, you can't help but feel like you've just been marinating in more than warm air. You've been soaking in the very broth of Roman social life. You follow the gentle slope of the floor toward the caldarium, the hot room where the air feels thick enough to drink. The moment you step inside, the heat wraps around you like a heavy cloak, and your lungs work a little harder with each breath. The marble underfoot is almost too warm to stand on for long, so you shuffle toward the nearest bench, feeling your pores open before you've even Saturday down. This is where gossip gets its most intense flavor, partly because the heat strips away people's reserve, and partly because you can't leave quickly without looking suspicious. The steam curls upward from the massive bronze water basins, blurring the edges of faces and turning every movement into a slow, dreamlike gesture. It's almost impossible not to lean in closer to hear someone through the hiss of vapor. A pair of young men are doing exactly that, heads bent over in conspiratorial posture. Between them, whispers about a magistrate's unexplained wealth thread their way through the steam. One claims his cousin saw a carload of Avery leaving the man's estate in the dead of night, bound for a warehouse that officially doesn't exist. The other smirks and says that's nothing. Wait until you hear who owns the warehouse. Near the far wall, a group of older women recline against cushions, their cheeks flushed from the heat. They speak softly at first, trading family updates, until one of them mentions that a certain patrician's daughter has been seen too often at the chariot races. There's nothing scandalous about watching a race unless, of course, you're always in the same private box as a certain driver known for winning and for breaking hearts. The women's laughter bubbles up like the steam itself, quickly swallowed by the room's damp air. What's remarkable here is how the caldarium's oppressive warmth acts like a truth serum. People fidget less, their voices lower, and the steady trickle of water from the pipes becomes the soundtrack to secrets being ladled out in careful portions. Historians still debate whether Romans consciously used the caldarium as a stage for serious gossip, or if it just happened naturally because the heat made everything feel more intimate. You lean back, letting the moist air cling to your skin, and your gaze catches on a freedman seated by the entrance. He's older, with the kind of posture that says he's listening to everything. People pass him on their way in or out, and without ever joining a conversation, he gathers more stories in an hour than most hear in a week. In a city where information is currency, someone like him is both dangerous and invaluable. And then there's the small matter of overhearing someone in a room where clothing is minimal and proximity is unavoidable. A comment meant for one pair of ears might drift across to another, uninvited. This is why the truly skilled gossipers choose their seats with tactical precision, close enough to hear, far enough to avoid being accused of eavesdropping. By the time you leave the caldarium, your skin feels like it's been steeped in hot wine, and your mind is equally saturated with other people's intrigues. The cooler air outside hits you like a sudden draft, and for a moment you feel light, not just from the sweat, but from the knowledge you've absorbed. Out here, the gossip will either cool into harmless chatter or ignite into tomorrow's scandal, depending on who carries it out the door.